Hey everybody, it's me, Peter. So, today let's talk about language. Now there are very few things that I actually feel like I can talk about as an expert, and provide an opinion and feel like my opinion carries value. But one of those things that I do feel like I'm an expert in is language. If you don't know, and you probably should by now, I speak Chinese, Spanish, English, a little bit of French, I can understand French, and very, very trace amounts of Russian. And then since I speak Spanish and French, I can also understand Portuguese and Italian, things like that. So I think that gives me a little bit of credibility when it comes to language stuff. And I want to talk to you guys today about why language matters to me. So first things first, the earliest memory that I have of being exposed to foreign language is going up to my grandpa's motel that he used to own way back in the day when I was like 5 or 6 or probably younger, and getting to meet the migrant workers that lived in the motel. They were all Hispanic and they would speak Spanish, and I'd be playing on my grandpa's porch or in the area, in the vicinity, and I'd just go up to them and start talking because, that's what kids do, and then they'd talk to me. And, being an adorable kid, if you haven't seen my baby pictures, here's one. That was just the cutest little thing ever, and so everybody always talked to me. And I remember thinking, these people aren't speaking what my parents speak, and that's really cool, because what they're saying sounds really neat. And that's probably when I first realized that I really like foreign languages. Because first of all, they sound super cool, and second of all, when you know a foreign language, that opens up the world to you, which is just mind-bogglingly awesome. But then skipping ahead, as I got older, I started going to school, and I was fortunate, again, because my parents were terrified that I'd get bullied, because my brothers had gotten bullied. So they put me in a private school. And this private school offered really simple Spanish classes, and I had Senora Yandolino teach me Spanish and a little bit of French from about 1st through 7th grade, and it was great. I love Spanish. I thought it was so great, and being in California, there's a lot of exposure to Spanish in particular. And then my brother married this lady whose family was from Colombia. This lady being my sister, Carla. And I love Carla so much. Like, sister by marriage, but she's the best big sister that I could ever have. Hey, Carla. And so all of Carla's family adopted me, and they called me like Pedrito, and they talked to me in Spanish, and they'd give me practice as much as I wanted, which was great because going through high school, that's when I really started to get enamored with the language. And part of that is because I liked learning it, and I liked the idea of being able to say something in another language and understanding what other people were saying in another language. And so throughout high school, I took 4 years of Spanish. I ended up taking AP Spanish when I was a senior, and I really enjoyed it. And then I got to college, and I took more Spanish until I had no more Spanish to take, and I got to go to Mexico, and it was just such a great experience learning that language. But there are two particular events that stand out in my brain as being really significant in my wanting to learn languages. So the first event that happened that really made me realize the power of understanding language and the importance of understanding language, I had just graduated high school and I'd gotten a job at this local department store, and I worked stock. And so I went and I cut boxes open and put stuff on shelves and all that jazz, whatever stock people do. And there was this girl who was hired as a cleaning lady. And so in the morning, since stock people and cleaning people generally work at the same time, I'd see her and I was like, oh, well, she's kind of cute. Being a boy, that was my first reaction. And I noticed that she never really talked. And so then one day I was like, I wonder if she speaks English. And so I started talking to her and I was like, ¿Hablas español? She was like, sí. And then so we started talking. And it was so great because this was the first time that I had, where I put the skill that I had to great use, because there was no other way that we could have communicated if I hadn't known Spanish, because she didn't speak a lick of English. And so as, after a couple months, we were friends and we were talking, and I thought, I should offer to teach her English, because she'd told me that she would speak English if she knew how, but she didn't have any time because she was always working to help pay for family stuff. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And so we met at this park where I live, and having never really taught a foreign language before at the time, I was like, well, maybe we should start, teaching English rather, maybe we should start with the basics, alphabet, some simple pronunciation, stuff like that. So we get to it and we start talking, and I start telling her, A is pronounced A, like EI in Spanish, B, like BI, etc., spelling it out in phonetically in Spanish. But as time goes on, I notice that she's really uncomfortable. And I don't understand why. Like, I'm looking around and I don't see anything really bizarre. But eventually I'm like, well, I should find out. So I ask her, I'm like, hey, what's the matter? You seem really on edge. And she's like, I don't feel comfortable here. I was like, oh, what do you mean? Because, I looked around and it was a beautiful day. It was a park. And she was like, well, there are people who live around here that if they saw me, they'd give me a hard time. They'd just give me trouble. And this was a totally foreign concept to me, so I asked her to explain it. She's like, it's because I'm Mexican. Well, actually, she wasn't Mexican. She was Guatemalan. The perception was that anybody who was brown was Mexican. Anyone who's brown who spoke Spanish was Mexican. And where I grew up, as liberal-minded as a lot of people were, there were a lot of really backwards hicks. I did not question the veracity of her statement at all, because after I thought about it, I realized, yeah, we're in kind of the shady area of town. Like, up until that point, I had never had exposure to racism, or at least not racism that I caught on to, or this idea that there were places in the developed world where people didn't feel safe because of the color of their skin. And so she told me about what it was like, and about how there were places that she couldn't go. And it broke my heart a lot. Naturally, I told her, okay, no, totally, I understand. And so we got in my truck and we went down to another place. And she was like, this is much better. This is a lot safer. I don't mind. Thank you for doing this for me. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And we keep going. And then after a few months, I left the job and she had to get a different job somewhere else. But that will always stick with me. Seeing that kind of fear in somebody's eyes and understanding that just because I feel safe somewhere does not mean somebody else feels safe. And it's such a sad thing to think about. And I think about it every time I think about understanding a foreign language. And when people start talking about like, oh, it was America, learn to speak English. Oh, that makes me mad. That makes me so mad. But I'm not going to get into that. So, the other time that I realized being bilingual gave me an advantage, but at the same time, other people being monolingual gave them a disadvantage, was when I was talking to my friend Alma. Alma and I met right in, I think around the senior year when I was in high school, and she and I have been friends since then, and she's just the most awesome person in the world. Alma, I love you so much. You're so great. But Alma and I, we went out drinking one time. This is when I joined the Navy. We were walking around San Jose, and it was at the end of the night, and so we went to this bakery, and we started talking. And she told me about how, because Alma's Mexican, and she used to live, I believe, in DF, the Mexico City. But then at a certain age, she came and she immigrated to the United States. Back in Mexico City, she was spot on for all of like math and Spanish and literature and geography and all that stuff. It was great. She was doing really great in class. But then when she came here, everything was taught in English. And this is because back in the day, I think it was 1998, California passed a law that specifically banned bilingual education. But she told me when she came here, she found herself immediately drowning. She went from being the top of her class to the bottom of her class. And this isn't because Mexico has a substandard education system. It's because she no longer knew what was going on. She was better at basically everyone else in her class, but how are you going to learn math if you don't know English? And this is something that makes sense when you think about it. Just like, fundamentally, yes, if you have somebody that comes from another country and they don't speak a word, or they speak very limited English when they come here, they're going to be at a huge disadvantage. And people have banned bilingual education because they feel like it somehow infringes on Americanism, or it disencourages integration, or what the hell ever, I don't know. But most of the things that they think are the case with bilingual education aren't true. Basically, when you ban bilingual education, what you're doing is you aren't giving somebody a leg up in learning English by forcing them to be in immersion. You're forcing them to be held behind, because if your teacher can't use Spanish to communicate with you, to teach you the basic fundamental concept of math as everyone else around you is learning these things, you're going to be behind. And that puts so many people at such a huge disadvantage. So yeah, well, one of these conversations, the one with the girl that I worked with was in Spanish. And then the conversation that I had with Alma, I think, was probably a mix of English and Spanish, because I was super drunk and she was super drunk, and that's how you do, you just mix languages. And the best thing about being able to communicate in all of these different languages is it helped me understand other people. Before I knew Spanish, and I'd hear people speak Spanish, I'd be like, oh, I don't know what they're saying. It's like jilikwala, which is Chinese for jibber jabber. But then after you learn Spanish and you start listening to people using Spanish, it's like, oh, they're saying something intelligible. And then you actually hear them, like they talk to you, and they're using that language to communicate with you. Suddenly, this isn't just some person who's speaking jib jab. They are talking to you, they are communicating with you, and you are suddenly very much entwined in their lives and livelihoods and well-being. And the next thing you know, you're empathizing with them and you want what's good for them. So that's why I like language so much. That's why language matters to me. It helps me understand other people. And I happen to be of the mind that if more people tried to empathize with others, this world would be a much, much better place. So that's why I like languages. Thanks for watching, guys. I got a little sweary and a little offendy, and I'm sorry if I said something that offended you, but it's a big deal to me, and sometimes we get angry, and that's okay, because it means that we care about things. And if you don't care about something, you should. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.